Welcome, friends. This is Under the Arch Sports. I'm Eric.
And I'm David.
And today we're going to preview Mizzou's game against the Florida Gators. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, guys, I am on the move once again. For those of you who watch Under the Arch Sports regularly, you'll notice I'm in a new place again. The Air Force moved me to Texas. I'm in my hotel room in Texas. Almost there. This is kind of a weird game, David. I don't think anybody expected Mizzou and Florida to be playing a game in the second half of November where both teams are fighting for bowl eligibility.
Yeah, and I mean,
yeah. Mizzou and Florida both 5-5, and for Missouri, David, I think the big story is what's going to happen with quarterback. Connor Bazelak got yanked in the win against South Carolina, basically for performance.
Yeah, and this question is going to be key not only for the rest of this season, but for our program going forward in the next couple of years. Because depending on what happens down the stretch, you could potentially have one or two transfers in the quarterback position leaving the school, which could really damage the support of our quarterbacks, basically.
Yeah. And for any Florida fans that might have stumbled across this video, Connor Bazelak's been banged up, and Coach Eli Drinkwitz has he's not hid the fact that he is a fan of being able to list Bazelak as questionable. So I think we should expect that. And he's flat out said it's for gamesmanship, that he doesn't want the other team to know exactly what the plan is. So I think we should expect that. Even if Bazelak does start, I think Mizzou fans should expect to see Brady Cook out there, at least some.
Yeah, and for, again, Florida fans who may not have caught the end of the last game against South Carolina when Mizzou was playing them, Bazelak had two just god-awful turnovers. Like not even competitive passes.
The decision making was just horrendous, and the throws were just about as bad.
Yeah, and in the post game, you could see a visibly frustrated Drink. But basically, what happened is that last drive, they pulled him out and put Brady Cook in, mainly so they could run out the clock because he has a decent amount of speed with him. And they just handed the ball to Beatty for the rest of the game, pretty much. You could tell visibly
in the
post-game interview that you could tell visibly in the post-game interview, Drink was frustrated with Bazelak. The question would come up now because he can kind of see it boiling over. How much longer is he going to stay with them, or is he going to start rotating him and Brady Cook now? Because they're especially with the immobility of Bazelak, you can now throw Cook in there and have some different type of running packages going on. So that might be something to keep an eye out this upcoming game.
Yeah, Brady Cook isn't necessarily a guy that's going to make half the Florida defense miss, but he's got enough straight line speed to be effective on some of the read option type plays. Whereas, the Florida defense, if they see Missouri running a read option type play with Bazelak in there, they're just going to laugh and then go get Tyler Beatty because Connor Bazelak's not going anywhere. And everybody in the stadium knows it.
Well, and I will say Brady Cook can throw the ball. However, he's not near as accurate as Bazelak. So he could still pose a threat when he's in there. But again, he's a backup and hasn't had as much practice, so I don't know if you would see as much of that. So it's real intriguing to see what happens because it's clear that Bazelak isn't 100% and he's struggling.
Yes. One group that's not struggling, at least not nearly as badly, is the running defense for Missouri. There was a point, about a month ago, about 4 games ago, they were giving up about 280 yards a game on the ground. They've taken about 40 yards off of that. They're still second to worst in the country. But since the bye week, they they figured something out. The last 3 games coming off of the bye week, the first one was Vanderbilt, where they gave up 2 massive quarterback keepers to the backup quarterback for Vandy, Mike Wright. 169 yards, 171 yards, which bad. But take those 2 plays away. When Vandy actually handed off to a running back, they didn't do anything. I mean, nothing. Then they played Georgia. And, I mean, it's Georgia against Missouri. So it's not like Mizzou shut them down. But there were a number of plays for minimal gain or a loss. And the numbers were actually respectable, which, frankly, that's all you can ask for, given the talent level of the 2 teams. And then you look at Carolina. In the 3rd quarter last week, I believe I looked at you and said, I pointed at the scoreboard, and in the middle of 3rd quarter, Carolina had 2 yards rushing as a team. They got a little bit more, but they weren't exactly running all over Missouri. So I think this the run defense, they found something. Not enough to be, all SEC type of run defense, but they're better. And, anything is better than what it was. I think you have to look at the emergence of Chad Bailey as a big factor in that. And against South Carolina, they did it without Mekhi Wingo. He did not play. So that makes it all the more impressive for the 2 of us, at least, because we're very high on Mekhi Wingo, the freshman D tackle.
And it's still him. He was injured. That's why he didn't play. So.
Oh, yeah.
I wholeheartedly or fully give credit to Steve Wilkes. He figured something out. I don't know if he simplified the scheme or what he did, but all of a sudden our D line is actually playing in their gap responsibilities. They're not over pursuing and giving up those major holes up the middle. Linebackers are filling in like they're supposed to now. So he may have simplified the defense, or they're finally starting to understand the defense now that they're halfway through the season and something just clicked.
Hey, Isaiah McGuire, reigning SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week.
Yeah. And so based off that, like originally up until the Vandy game, I really couldn't stand the guy and thought he was going to be gone. Now, with the improvement of the defensive running game, I think he's going to be around. I
agree.
Mizzou's gonna get rid of him.
Unless they totally regress and give up 300 yards on the ground to Florida and Arkansas.
Well, and Florida has a good run. Florida has a good rushing offense, so it could happen. But at the same time, they definitely have shown improvement on the defensive side of the ball. That South Carolina game was a lot more of a one-sided show than the score made it out to be. A couple bad decisions kind of ruined that one.
Yeah.
But they've definitely shown improvement, and I will say they are going up against a really good rushing offense with Florida. I think they're ranked 9th in the country.
9th in the country, that's right.
So they got another tall order to stopping the run. If they can slow down Florida at all offensively, I think we have a shot, which would lead us to something we're going to talk about right before we give our picks. But the improvement is just honestly really good to see, and it's given them a chance to get to a bowl game, which with this team is very important because we have a lot of young guys who need that extra month of practice.
Absolutely. And with Florida and their running game, we said 9th in the country in rushing offense, and Emory Jones, the quarterback, Florida announced they're sticking with Emory Jones. They've kind of had a little bit of back and forth between him and Anthony Richardson. It's going to be Emory Jones who's going to be the quarterback. Although I did see an article that said that they might have packages for Richardson, so don't be surprised to see both quarterbacks. And as I mentioned, Emory Jones is the leading rusher for Florida with 600, I want to say 20 some odd yards. So the dual threat quarterback has been something. I mentioned Mike Wright, the Vandy backup. He torched Mizzou on 2 separate runs during that game. Making sure that they don't give up those runs is going to be so huge. Defensive ends just don't get too crazy. Don't get sucked in on read option or any sort of fake. Make sure that if nothing else, just keep him horizontal. It's going to be a huge point for Missouri trying to win this game.
Yeah, and I would say the other key there would be our cornerbacks getting off wide receiver blocks, because if anything on the outside, that's usually where we end up getting gashed.
Yeah.
So if they can get off their blocks and play contain on those speed option or read option type plays, I think Mizzou will be able to at least keep the large runs out of play. So we'll have to wait and see on how this game develops down the road.
Yeah, David, and for this game, it's all about Florida in my mind. You're looking at a Florida team that spent a little bit of time ranked in the top 10, I believe 10th. And then, since then, they got beat at Kentucky. Then they beat Vandy, which doesn't really count for anything. Then they lost to LSU, lost to Georgia, lost to South Carolina. The Carolina and Georgia games, both blowouts. And then they did what they did with Sanford, 70-52, which is just stunning. That's an FCS Sanford team that is below 500. I know Emory Jones set the single game record for Florida in that with 550 yards, which is, that's fun and everything. But the big question for Florida, David, is, do they care? Or are they just done?
Yeah, and who knows? It's hard to tell. I would border on they don't care anymore, but with the bowl season in jeopardy, maybe they turn it on. That Sanford game was a real shocker because it was a nail biter until toward what was it, the fourth quarter. So, and the fact that they gave up 52 points just really showed me they were not into that game at all. They're coming up to Mizzou playing in 50-degree weather. Again, like you said, do they care? The stadium's going to be, I don't know, a little under 2/3 full.
There's not been a crowd of 50,000 at Faroe Field this year. And I don't expect that to change.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're coming up, blah weather, blah atmosphere around the stadium.
Yeah, you can say the atmosphere is going to be like a funeral compared to what Florida's probably used to.
Yeah. So, do they care? Maybe, maybe not. It all depends on, did they quit on their head coach? I don't know. So, at this point, I really think they're done, personally. But who knows? They could totally turn things around. So, Eric, based off all of this, what's going to be your pick for this game?
This might be the hardest game of the year to pick just because it's all about Florida. As we just said, it's an effort thing with Florida. How emotionally invested are they in the rest of their season? I think if Florida cares, I think Missouri can't do anything about it. I don't think they care that much. They might care a little bit now that maybe they're embarrassed and all that and the other. But so that's a long way of saying it's not going to be a blowout. I'm thinking this up on the fly because I still haven't decided. I think it's going to be a battle. I don't think Florida will cover the 8.5-point spread, but I do think Florida is going to win, barely. I'm going to say Florida will win. Let's go 34-28 for Florida.
Yeah, and I agree with you that they're not going to cover the spread. So, but I also think Mizzou is going to put up enough and surprise them enough to pull off a win here. However, I do think it's going to be a bit of a shootout, kind of like that Sanford game last week. I have Mizzou winning this one 42-35, and I also have them covering the over, which I think is going to be, I don't know, probably in the 60s. So it'll be interesting to see.
Good.
Anyway, that's all we have.
Advice. Take the over. It's somewhere in the 60s.
I honestly haven't looked, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's, especially after last week, if it was somewhere in the 60s. That, I mean, was 122 points in their last game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So I think a good shot on this one is hitting the over because both defenses are just kind of like whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see how both teams come out, and I think Eric's right in one thing. It's going to be a barn burner. It's going to be a fun one to watch, um, and hopefully Mizzou can come out with a win and get bowl eligible. So anyway, thank you guys for watching Under the Arch Sports, and who knows where Eric will be next week.
Yeah.